Welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christine Marie, and y'all. I have to say, this is an incredibly special episode for me. Probably one of the most special. I've had one of my siblings come on and join us about, gosh, it was probably 6 or 7 months ago. And I am so honored to be joined by another sibling, Susanna Hoffman, today. She is the youngest, but also I would say one of the wisest of the six of us. And I am just so privileged, Susanna, that you would join us here. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, it is. I feel like it's overdue that I get to join you on here, but I feel like the time is right. So I'm just so amazed by you. You've always been an inspiration. And I mean, talk about wisdom. I have a visceral memory of you. I think you were 12 when you ran the girls' camps at the house. And I just remember you really were a mentor just even at that young age. So I've benefited from that in my late teens, early 20s. And so I'm just very happy to now share this with you.
Gosh, I'm so grateful. I think that this topic today actually is the most perfect one, Susanna, because you have modeled this so well, how to live in uncertainty, how to live in kind of the unknown. And I think you really have been the first of us to wade into the waters of the unknown in many ways. And I would love to talk about not even the specifics of what is the unknown, because every single person has their own experience with that and what that means to them. It could be moving even just away from daily habits and cultivating new ones to get me on the right track to living in accordance with who I want to be. What we talk about on the Knowing Show is really core intelligences that make us human: the intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and physical intelligence, and how to cultivate each one for the sake of, okay, where am I going? What am I called to do? Who do I want to be? And really answering those questions, and then effectively reverse engineering. Okay, how do I need to cultivate myself to get me there? And so a lot of us, we actually need to cultivate the skill set, the resilience perhaps, to exist in the uncertainty and the unknown of new behaviors, new belief systems, new ways of being. And so I'm excited to talk about that today. And before we even do, I'd love for you to maybe even give as much context as you'd like around this topic, just from your own experience over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So I love how you set the stage. And I think that that's why your work is so important, because I think that those topics are not just under discussed, but under articulated. And I think just the more you can articulate those very subtle nuances of the human journey, the more it helps you realize how to address them and cultivate them. So I think you're articulating things that, people experience in their everyday life, every moment. They just don't have the tools or the awareness to understand what's happening.
Yes.
So for me, with my experience with the unknown, I guess, I mean, we were raised in the same household. I'm sure your audience is very familiar. For anyone who's new, we were raised in a very Christian, evangelical home that was very charismatic. So not too much emphasis on structured theology or anything, much more experiential spirituality. Our parents specifically raised us to be very relational, which I'm super grateful for. I think each of us siblings have had pitfalls in our relationships because of that, but I'd rather err on the side of being too relational than not enough. So anyway, I guess I felt very I knew truth and I was headed towards truth. Even when our brother-in-law Nathan was killed, I was 15 at the time. My reaction was just kind of go numb, withdraw. But I still felt very I knew truth. I understood all the complicating life questions around this. I had the map to guide me through it. But it wasn't until college when I started finding, I guess, other articulations of truth where I was like, oh, this is a much bigger picture than what I understood it to be. And honestly, Jordan Peterson, I know a lot of people kind of equate him with Christianity now. His wife converted to Catholicism just a few years ago, and he's very much borderline now, but at the time he really wasn't. This is around like 2018, 19. So I started listening to him, and I felt like I was listening to his biblical series, like going through Genesis. I never listened to his lectures on Exodus, but hearing his process going through the scriptures that I always understood to be very literal, he talked about them in symbolism and metaphor and through a psychological lens. And that, to me, I was like, this completely changes how I interact with what was my guiding light. And I kept wanting to talk to people about it, both in my family, my friend group at college. I went to a very Christian college as well. It was like no one was really able to engage with me in this way. And so my curiosity was piqued. I was like, wait a minute. And I mean, just by listening to him so much, I don't know if people have listened to Jordan Peterson, but he is the king of talking out loud through this very complicated mental process. And I loved that because I just felt kind of starved for critical thinking. So I think his teaching to me was both the exposure to a different view of scripture, and kind of truth in general and what it could mean to humans, and also that critical thinking process. So through those two, I guess, new fields, I then started kind of doing my own research into philosophy and even myth. And myth was the one that really got me. Like, okay, I'm approaching this very much in the religious truth lens because that was what I understood truth to be.
Right.
And so myth is what really got me, because I was like, these stories sound very familiar in Greek myth. Like, why is this very similar to the Bible? And so there's a lot of, theological discussions to go into that. But basically, once I was out of college, I met someone who I ended up dating, who was like the first person that was able to, on a very intellectually rigorous plane, engage with me with these ideas and kind of affirm my own questioning. And that's when I really felt deep into the unknown. Like, I was starting to accept my own hesitancies about how I was raised to, or what I was raised to believe. And so through that, that's kind of my first encounter with the unknown, I'd say. And moving through that was so uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable because you're questioning, what got me through my brother-in-law's passing. So it's like, yeah, it was very uncomfortable, very scary. It also was very isolating because, like I said, all of my family and friends did believe, my background. So I was very much kind of on my own in thinking this. But thankfully, like, our dad was very supportive. Everyone was very, I think they didn't quite understand, but they were supportive. But my dad saw that I was doing this out of a desire to seek truth, not just to like rebel. So I really appreciated that. So I think that's when I first encountered the feeling of the darkness of the unknown, just that it's completely unmapped territory that you're moving into, and how to then navigate that. So I kind of want to leave that there and see what your follow-up thoughts are from what I just shared.
Well, I love this forum of having this conversation because we've talked about from different angles, but to hear kind of almost like your Genesis story in a way that probably we wouldn't any other time in any other discussion. It's such a privilege, and you describe it so well. And looking back, kind of in hindsight, kind of following the through line, especially because while you were in college, I was having kind of my own experience of my world changing. And so it's meaningful to hear you describe your experience. And there's so much honor I hold for your moving into, like you said, the darkness. The unknown is the darkness in so many ways, because when you have the light, and I'm excited to actually explore this metaphor. I think it's actually going to be many layers deep. So let's kind of traverse into the exploration of the light versus the dark, because the dark has always held this concept of you're actually maybe something akin to the darkness represents perhaps evil, or like the shadow, whereas the light is the ideal, the good, the desired. Yet, if we are allowing for that which is uncertain, that which is unknown, there is a veil in so many ways. There is a darkness. So it's like, okay, what's maybe the same side of the coin of the negative of darkness, yet the darkness that actually allows for the light to even shine. Like Jordan Peterson, talking about him in the first place, I know he has changed over the last couple of years. So kind of returning to the OG Peterson.
Yeah.
He talks about this concept of you actually have to stare into the abyss long enough to get to the other side and grab hold of the keys of redemption. Like in the darkness, we then, if we look long enough and if we stay there long enough, lingering in that discomfort, we actually come to find the light.
Yes.
And so there's this whole other side of darkness that actually perhaps needs to be pursued and needs to maybe even be, and I think actually pursued is the right word. Like I am pursuing the darkness of the unknown, which could even masquerade as something which is not good or not desired, or I don't want to say evil, because it needs to be laced with wisdom. But tell me what your thoughts are on this topic, because I think that there's a lot of nuance here.
Yeah, I think, and this is where the intelligences really intertwine, because I think spiritual intelligence is really important here to kind of discern what that darkness is.
So
and I think, yeah, I think adhering to your sense of morality is really important in that exploration. But you have to have your hand open enough to be able to change what your sensibilities are. So, and I mean that gets to something so core about our upbringing, is that so many things were forbidden or pre-taught to us to be like bad. So I think that's kind of niche, though, to be that narrow in what your perception of good and bad is. So I want to, I guess, address more generally what I think, the perception of darkness is. I think darkness, it really is just like that feeling of being lost, like you can't see in front of you. It's not so much like, and I think people know when they are going to be moving into a season where it is unknown, and there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of discomfort that comes from that. And so, I was just thinking of the word change as you were talking about darkness and lost, because I think what I have now in the season of more so my life circumstances being unknown rather than my more intellectual life, I have gotten still the same feelings of being lost in the change, because it really is a surrender of self to not knowing who you're going to be once you move through the darkness. And it really is a death of you're smiling. What?
That's so good.
Oh.
That's so good. Yeah, keep going. I love that.
Because darkness is like, you just don't know who you're going to be on the other side. And for me, I think this is the first time that I've kind of gone through such drastic change at a pace where I can see my life before and know that that is like over, that life is dead, that version of me is dead. So that to me is what darkness feels like. Not so much the, I don't want to like talk about the differentiation between evil and how to discern that, but just in terms of life or change, I think.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the intelligences in terms of spiritual discernment, because I think that to that point, there has been such a lack of dimension in the, so I like how the way that you described of how we were raised. I did have fundamentalist in kind of my definition of how we were raised, because it was black and white.
Yeah.
Whereas even as we're talking about darkness, it's like the dimension of gray, the dimension of what is just shadow, what is just, fuzzy, and we just don't know what's there. But it was either clear, obvious, we can know it, or it was all like to be avoided. Rather than like, but what is the dimension of darkness that is actually so necessary in asking of the questions? And even Susanna, what you said, the reason why I smiled is because it's so profoundly true, and it's so in alignment with, I feel like, my whole theme of this year for me, from my last birthday to this one, has been letting go, and really cultivating this ability to let go in every regard. And so effectively what you're saying is let go of even your own ideal for
Yeah.
who you become. Because if I'm grasping tightly onto that, then I could very well not even evolve to my own greatest potential because I'm not even aware of what that could be. So
Yeah.
if I have the ideal in my mind, but also allow for there to be kind of fogginess around it, that allows for our own evolution, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know
Oh,
our greatest potential.
we really don't. And as you were talking, I was like, wow, darkness is opportunity. And I think if you can perceive it that way, it not only helps make sense of what's happening and gives it kind of a purpose, um, but it helps you kind of take advantage of all that, yeah, you could be through that season, and it helps you respond in the moment of uncertainty. Because I
Mm.
think, I can't remember when I first thought of this framework. It probably was in a conversation with you at one point a few years ago. But the question of how would ideal me react right now has
Mm-hmm.
been so helpful to bring me out of whatever, catastrophizing I'm doing in the moment. And I'm like, oh, I have agency to determine how I'm going to respond in this situation and be someone that I admire in terms of my
Yes.
response. Um, and yeah, I think that has been something I'm definitely learning in the past few months. Life changes being like
Mhm.
over a year ago, I was very unexpected. Like me and my whole department, plus like many other employees,
Yeah.
were all laid off all of a sudden. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone like the Doge time. And then a long-term relationship ended. I wasn't getting rehired. I had to start my own consultancy, which is just never the plan. And what else? I started a grad program. So it was just like everything that I'm doing right now is totally like unfamiliar, unplanned. And I'm like, oh, wow. How can I possibly respond to this in a way that's productive and not like victimizing myself? Because there is so much opportunity in whatever stage you're in. And I think looking
Mm.
at yourself from an outsider's perspective or as your ideal self, you're like, oh, I see the opportunity here. Um,
Mm.
not
So
to discount all the emotions that have to be processed, because I think like there is real grief that comes from challenges and change. And yeah, like literally your old life or your old you is dying. That is definitely something
right.
to take seriously. Um, but
Mm.
yeah, I think
Hmm.
I could do with a lot more optimism and
Mm.
embrace the lessons to build resilience. Because, as you said, we have so much potential, and
Mm.
it really is a matter of what frameworks you're using and how to think about it.
Mm.
Because another part of the unknown that I'm realizing is my own like cognitive reaction to what is unknown in like the more physical world. And I'm like,
Yes.
as soon as I can train my like how this is so upsetting because I don't know how to think about this yet. So if I can figure out how to think about it, then I mean Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this. A lot of trauma is territories in your brain that haven't been mapped, they haven't been understood. So there's all these alarm bells around it to warn you
Wow.
to not fall in this pit again because you don't know how to avoid it. So if you kind of
I've
apply that,
never heard that.
oh my
Wow.
God,
Is that his book, Maps of Meaning? Is that what that's about? The maps in your brain?
probably I like saw it in one of his Harvard lectures, but he was, yeah, that was probably a Maps of Meaning
Wow.
lecture.
I need to read that. Good.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. And you said that so well. Can you say that one more time? Because I actually think that is just such an incredibly profound sentiment.
So he made this about like trauma, PTSD. It's this kind of hole or cavern in your brain of an experience
Mm.
that is so upsetting and traumatizing because your brain hasn't learned how to make sure that doesn't happen again. So it's creating all these guardrails and alarms to make sure that you don't fall in the same pit again. So if you can learn how to the mental map of how to, and that's why like exposure therapy, all these different types of tools are really helpful for people to learn like, oh, you can train yourself out of this response. And so I've just been trying to apply that to my own, I
Mm.
mean, not like traumatizing by any means, but just life-changing circumstances. um be like, okay, how am I going to train my brain to respond to this? Because it's upsetting, because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. I think that's so worthy of a pause even there. And for those of you just joining, I'm honored to be here with my sister Susanna. I'm number 4 in the lineup of 6, and she's number 6 in the lineup of 6. And so it's so fun and special to be here with you, Susanna. And those of you who are just joining, we're talking about how to effectively cultivate the muscles to exist in uncertainty. And Susanna, what you're saying here, I think, is actually such an important frame of our bodies, our positioning, and already have been for, everyone who came before us. Our bodies are trained to help us in survival. And part of the ability to have a map and an orientation for how do I exist in discomfort is so important, to literally have the narratives for us to speak out and kind of tell ourselves, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you're safe right now. It's okay for whatever we're experiencing right now, because our body, what our mind is I guess you could say kind of predisposed to do, is that 40% of our own stress, it shuts down and it starts going into survival mode, and fight, flight, freeze, or fawn starts kicking in. And David Goggins talks about this, where, he was a Navy SEAL and then he went on to do so many other crazy things. But at 40%, our brain says we're done, but we still have 60% left to go. And so it really
Wow.
is about training our mind. How do we learn to what you're saying, like map those parts that don't have context for what we're experiencing right now, and ensure that we're the ones in the driver's seat, not fear, not fight, not flee, because fight being in the driver's seat at 6 years old looks really different. Fight in the driver's seat at 60. That's actually very dangerous if you don't know how to control your body and the reaction. So to your point about mapping, like there's just something here that I think is so worthy of really digging into, of, do we even know our own reactions well enough to identify, oh, I'm in this situation, my alarm bell is kicking off and signaling, and I can take a third party outside perspective and kind of look at me in this environment and know that I'm safe. And who am I going to listen to? This morning on the Knowing Show, we were talking about who has the mic in your life, like whose voice is the loudest for you. And so if it's the 6-year-old self, who at some point this was a scary situation, or it's just the unknown, because our bodies are actually created to shut down and to keep us safe. That's its like primary goal, rather than its primary goal to be to evolve or grow or learn how to exist in a digital world. We weren't created for that, but we have to learn how to exist,
Not
and
at all.
your thoughts on that, Susanna. Like, we're exposed to so much bad information and bad news, and like it's really destabilizing. And so I'd love like to hear kind of a couple of ways, maybe 3 ways that you allow for that inner peace. And inner peace can sound floofy, but it really is something that's very tangible that you can take real steps to do, so that when your alarm bell starts ringing, you don't completely get thrown off course, but you can still walk in alignment of, this is who I want to be and this is where I'm going.
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I had an anecdote come to mind as you were just, explaining more the concept of having to map out a response. When I was 17, 18, when I was a freshman at college, and this was after our brother-in-law passed, I realized, and it took me a long time to even recognize this pattern, but I had a huge problem with intimacy with my friends. If I was in a room with all of them too long, to the point where I would start feeling vulnerable, but I didn't know it was because I was feeling vulnerable. I would just start feeling really uncomfortable, even if we were just hanging out like nothing was wrong, and I would just like up and leave. And my friends actually started reflecting this back to me after probably like a year, that I would just leave the room. Like I would just kind of disappear. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, why would I do that? Like, so odd.
That's weird.
So I know. And so I went to the school counselor and I was like, this keeps happening. And I think it's because I have a problem with intimacy. Like, I don't want to actually be known by my friends. And so she was like, and then I told her, I was like, it feels terrifying to stay longer because I feel like somehow I'd be exposed, but it's scary because I feel like I would be jumping off a cliff essentially, just for whatever reason. That was my own like that's what it would have felt like to be in that room longer. And she was
Wow.
like, well, you don't have to jump off a cliff. You can just find like the next step down. What would that look like for you? Would that be staying 5 minutes longer? And
Mm.
so that to me, I was like, you really can map your way out of like a
Yeah.
lot of different things. As long
Mm.
as it is fear, I don't know so much if like your personal thing is ego. I think that's much harder to, and I think we've talked about this briefly, Christene.
Right.
I think that's less mappable because it's a different type of condition.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right, like, if it actually is a trauma response, but if it's just and this is where, Susanna, you actually kinda said this at the very beginning, you were like, "Well, there's a difference between discerning." Like, this is where spiritual intelligence is really important, to discern,
Mhm.
is this me feeling vulnerable, or is this actually something that I need to, like, get out of? This is a bad situation. Even
Yeah.
DJ, as Susanna was giving this, story, DJ actually thought of you, and then I just saw you put in the comments, like, "Well, what if you just wanna leave? What's wrong with that?" And I don't think
Yeah.
that there is anything wrong with that. However, I think it's being aware of, when are we resisting vulnerability? When are we resisting even the discomfort that could lead to growth? And
Mhm.
I think that, when we look at emotional intelligence, there's kind of like a few steps that cultivate that first part of emotional intelligence for the human being, for us individually. And it's the very
Mhm.
first step is to be aware of, and then it's to understand, and then it's to control, and then it's to convey one's own emotions. And then,
Mhm.
okay, well, then how do we do this interpersonally? And then it talks about that. But like, the first step is being aware. So, do we even know what we're feeling in that moment?
Yeah.
And have the discernment between different emotions.
Yeah. And I guess this links to the question that you asked me about, I guess, the digital age. Dude,
Mm,
that will completely remove your ability to be self-aware, is if you are totally immersed in technology. It is
mhm.
crazy how much I realize about myself and my life if I am just thinking and not distracted and I'm not consumed. Because what was I listening to the other day? But it takes the human brain X amount of time to like truly settle in a topic and like be fully present in that moment. And
Yeah.
obviously that pertains to like digital workflow, why there's complications there. I think the
Mm,
statistic was that most professional, or Microsoft had a statistic that like Microsoft Word was most used on like Saturdays and Sundays rather than the weekday for work, because people are like talking and
mm.
collaborating and moving from thing to thing to thing, but they're not doing the deep work until they're not getting pulled away and on the weekend, which I thought was like, that's so true. I
It's
totally
so
resonate with that.
true.
I know, so that's totally like a point for the professional world, but personally, yeah, I
Mm,
think all curiosity is stripped away if you're just kind of numbing out your brain all the time scrolling.
mhm.
It's just what happens. And I knowing what it's like to feel very reflective and feel like you're always having many revelations about yourself, and yeah, like, why do I leave the room? Oh, maybe that's actually something I want to address. That
Yeah.
totally is killed when I have Instagram on my phone,
Yeah. I know what you mean. My darling actually just this week deleted all his social media apps, which
Amazing.
I was so grateful for. Like, I just reflected that back. I was like, it seems like your social media seems to cause more harm than good. Like, you've got a lot on there that is distracting and takes you away from this moment, and can even make you very upset. Like, what if you were to just take a break? And he did it of his own volition, but already it's like he's really had a lot more space and just been more peaceful. So
Mm,
I love what you say about that, because it gives you the time and space to actually go inward, and to your point, curiosity. It's like, what are you going to
yes.
find? That's so fun. What are you going to
It
find?
is. I love that. And I do think curiosity is necessary because I have a tendency to be very self-critical.
Mm,
Um, and so I think I'm really learning how to reframe self-reflection as something positive, like, oh, okay, I could have done better there. I know for next time,
yes,
have a
yes.
lot more grace for myself. But yeah, gosh, I think
Mhm.
technology just totally sucks all of that away. So a
Yes.
little pact I've made for myself is to just, well, I also know why I'm on Instagram. It's because I'm lonely.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. I love you. And isn't that such a good point? Why are you on there? And
Yeah.
I can say a blanket statement, social media, and Cat's tongue says depends on what you're consuming digitally, and then having the choice to be on here for the sake of even engaging in the chat here and having thoughtful questions and growing. Don't pull it up; it's distracting.
Oh, sorry. I just found, you saw me find it.
I saw you find it. I always tell my guests, I'm like, don't look, because thankfully the last couple of weeks people have been more kind, but for the first like 9 months of having the show, it was like terrible. Some of the things in the chat were just like awful, so I would like tell my guests, don't look. But it's been kinder, and people today have been
Okay, good.
but I will say, it's a good reminder that it's not about just like stop scrolling and delete all your social. It's really about living with intention. Why are you on there? What are you seeking to gain or grow, or how is this bringing you comfort? And just because you're finding comfort there doesn't mean you shouldn't, but it's more so about just living intentionally and being aware, am I taking this action with the intention and knowledge of how is this going to help me in my life and be an asset to me rather than being reactive. Instead, it's living with a proactive action.
And is this something my ideal self would do?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not
Yeah.
for me.
It's
not.
so true. Yeah. And maybe for some people that is, I actually have talked with some folks here on the show, Susanna, where their ideal self is not pursuing more in life. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's honestly the goal though.
I need to learn from that.
Yeah.
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 I think there are very unhealthy drivers for people that are always reaching for the next thing. And I think we have some shared people in our life that we know that about, where it just feels like unhealthy how much they're striving and they're pushing and they're obtaining. They don't even like, there's a tendency when things are so achievable to always be getting that, I don't know, would it be an endorphin hit? What kind of serotonin hit? I don't know the difference. What's the difference?
I'm not, I can't speak to the scientific
Maybe someone in the chat.
All right, y'all.
Positivity is
did you say the difference between serotonin and what did you say? Endorphins? I think serotonin. Isn't
that like happiness, and then endorphins is like, I don't know. I've associated them both with positivity.
It's so funny that you say this. I was literally doing research on this 2 weeks ago. Serotonin is associated with happiness, but I don't know the difference on the serotonin versus endorphins.
We'll see if
Isn't endorphins the dopamine?
Dopamine, that's the other
one. Right. We need you. We need y'all in your chat. Tell us.
The dopamine hit, that's the one I was looking for, because that's like, I've always used that regarding achievements and like that excitable drive. So I think I need to be careful and really evaluate why I'm doing what I'm doing in my life. And our uncle passed recently, and he went so above and beyond in everything he was doing. But I think he genuinely, that's what was so fulfilling for him. He really felt present everywhere he was, and that's how he wanted to live his life. And for me, I'm like, I don't know that I want to be busy like that. I don't know if I want to. And that's totally a subjective call. But I think it's really easy to kind of have this like mimetic desire, looking around you, seeing what people in your environment are doing, and view that as the standard. But like now I'm more in DC circles, and I felt very pushed to achieve. And like I caught myself today thinking, oh, once I'm in this new position, God knows how the metric will change for what success is. And I'm like, no, I need to guard against that.
Good for you.
That's not the point. And so going back to inner peace, that original question like 15 minutes ago, I think, being in a place where, at least this is the sensation that I really want to be intentional to cultivate. It's feeling contentment, like managing stress, that my actions aren't driven by stress. They're driven out of a sense of like responsibility, excitement, curiosity, I guess, duty and a sense of excellence, but not out of stress. And it's just like, gosh, how much of my 20s have I lived in this, like operating out of this stress factor, trying to achieve and arrive somewhere. And then I think that's
Wow.
the biggest thing I've learned is just like, there is no arriving. You're just going to redefine what success looks like when you get somewhere, because it's always changing.
Wow.
So this is my life today, right now, exactly where I am. This is my life.
Mm,
And if I'm always anticipating the next thing, I'm totally missing the beauty of the moment. And then my life's just going to fly by and I'm going to feel like I never lived it. So that's something that I really want to be careful about. And I think that's why for me, social media is such a massive, like, it totally robs me of my experience of the here and now.
right.
Um, so, but that's just for me. Like, I like what you said, that there are so many uses for it. I totally agree with that. I mean, it was my job, literally, social media management was my job for a while. But yeah, so that's what I'm trying to work on. And for
Mm,
me, I'm still trying to figure out like the routines and rhythms that looks like. It has changed a lot. And a lot of it is just changing your mindset of what you're already doing to be aware.
mm.
So I'm like, I can have just as much fulfillment and enjoyment in whatever my routine was before without having to like upend the boat and then get that sense of presentness and satisfaction.
That's so good. It's so interesting. I think there's seasons for, I just appreciate kind of this little fly has been like assaulting my face. I need to move inside. I like can tell myself like trying to like get it out. Note to self, don't sit outside in the afternoon. Um, I really love this concept of allowing for seasons of going really deep and allowing seasons of like it's time to upend the boat and like really analyze everything. And I felt that for me when I first kind of woke up, when I almost felt like I woke up from this trance, this stupor I had been living in for 28 years. And be like, oh my gosh, like I haven't been living. And
Mm,
and I had just this really intentional pursuit of like what is real. And Susanna, you'll still see me kind of like revert back to that. Like I think even it's like little girl Christene coming out where it's like, wait, what's real? Because I just haven't had for a long enough time like a firm grasp on no, like I know my experience and I'm awake to it and I'm not just sitting in someone else's experience.
wow.
I've lived so much of my life looking at the world through the lens of someone else rather than through my own lens. And
Well,
so those first couple of years after really kind of startling awake, it was more intense. But now to your point, it's like, okay, how do I live integrated and awake and alert and so full of joy where it doesn't have that kind of intensity of taking every moment and being so serious about it. But I needed to
mm,
do that at first. Like
yeah.
I needed to hold up that magnifying glass and really consider what was true in that moment for me in the most benign ways. Like
Wow.
really small things warranted me sitting and pausing and looking at what happened. I mean, like, why did I react that way? And so to your point of now today, it's like, well, no, it's coming now from a place of peace maybe versus that place of like I
Mm,
don't know and even kind of the fear of that. Like I realized how much I really didn't have a thumb on the pulse of truth. And so
yeah.
now it's like, okay, how do I actually lead from a place of rest as I lean into the darkness of still the unknown, still
Hmm.
being curious, still asking questions, but it's
Yeah.
no longer from the same place.
Well, I think that's you had to discover you, and
Mhm.
now you can kind of rest in you as you navigate other things that, like, it's a different boat that's being upset, but it's not you. So I wonder if that's kind of what the paradigm is now. And obviously, not to say like maybe you won't, like your boat won't get flipped again, but it's like
Yeah.
now all the things that are kind of hovering over, you're solid, and so
Mhm.
you engage on things in a way that doesn't feel as much upset to you yourself. Because just
Mhm.
thinking back to what we were talking about earlier in the darkness, like it does feel so lost and chaotic, and there's so much change. And from what you were just saying, I'm like, I think there's a difference when you're walking through something that's changing you on a very
Wow.
level versus you are navigating like a life change.
Right.
So I think for me, like why I want to be so aware is because I feel like everything else around me is so unknown. And so I feel so much chaos in all of my surroundings, but I can be grounded in myself. But I think, yeah, if I was part of that unknown, then it would look very different.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that that's such a good point. Yeah, like when you are going through what's the context, what's the situation and environment when you are going through such a radical upset, you know? Um, a family friend who was the therapist for our eldest sister when she lost her husband, and then mine when my husband left. It was she said it's like you've got this beautiful room with furniture carefully placed in different corners. You've got the lampstand, a beautiful rug, and like it's all been so designed for however many years you've been cultivating this room. And even before you even entered the room itself, you were dreaming about the room, and like you just have been tending to this space. And then all of a sudden, the entire floor gets completely destroyed. And now everything's floating in midair, about to come crashing down. And it's like you're watching the destruction. You're watching everything in midair and then watching it fall and shatter. And I just liked that concept because that's how it felt internally, you know? And so being able to move through that time of just deep, deep uncertainty and still like cultivate the tools so that you can return to that place of uncertainty when needed and have those skills, I think is so, so radically important because to your point, like we don't know when that's going to happen again. And if we're just continuously learning how to confront the abyss, and it's not something to be fearful of, but there's almost like a holy reverence for it, but you're not afraid.
Sorry, I lost you for just a second there. Can you finish the very last part of what you're saying?
Yeah, like I think that once you've been through an aspect of what darkness can look like, your reference point changes and it's no longer something to be afraid of, but something to have reverence for.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay. I feel it's wild that you just brought up that analogy of the room because I am looking at like my life has changed as I said the past year, but it hasn't it's been so uncertain in terms of what the new life would be. And now that I have a direction of what it is going to look like, at least for the summer, like a new house in a different city, totally new job that I've never done before. I'm like, oh, I loved the life that I wanted to live, that I had been so close to getting.
Wow.
How do you, but it shattered.
Yeah.
So how do you, and I love that you said have reverence for it because it is something that you loved. It is something that's beautiful. There doesn't have to necessarily, obviously there was a lot that like didn't work out about it for various reasons. A lot of it was my own growth that needed to happen, but it's not like there was anything deeply wrong with what that was. And so how have you moved through having that past that you did think was so beautiful, that you did love so much, and shattered, and then you had to build something else? Just like what's your relationship with that image from the past?
What's my relationship with it? I love that. Susanna, what a question. So I've had many different, I think it's taken me a while to get to this point of what I'm about to say. And maybe I'll even just give some examples of moments that have allowed for me to say what I'm about to say. So I'll give some preamble. I remember it was Christmas of 23 into 24, I think. And I was at mom and dad's house. So for those of you listening, we'll do Christmas like every other year on Christmas. So sometimes Christmas as a family, like on Christmas Day or 2 or 3 days later, because the in-laws have their kids and families and all of that. So it was Christmas Day. I was with my parents and everyone else was like doing their own thing because we were about to celebrate 2 days from now. And I just had this moment where I had, up until this point, just thought, man, I just despised 20-year-old Christine for getting married. Like, I just was like, how could you be so stupid? How could you let the wool be pulled over your eyes? Like, what's wrong with you? And I had this moment where I actually went back and I went into the room and I just like, all of a sudden I saw her. Like, I saw 20-year-old Christine and like this beautiful, I mean, just to put it bluntly, like this beautiful virgin bride, like wanting all the beautiful, wonderful things for her new husband and this beautiful life, and just really full of so much hope and like really doe-eyed innocence, you know? That was before Nate was killed, and it was just like there everything nothing had really gone terribly wrong yet in life. Some things had, but I never allowed myself to square off with them. So there was this ignorance, I think, too. There's a very fine line between innocence and ignorance. And I think I had a blend of both. And in that moment, that Christmas day, I went and I just like really just wept for this girl and really like fell for her. Like, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, that you have been left, that he didn't love you, that you did everything you could, and like you really had such a beautiful heart. And that was a really important moment to kind of go back and like grieve for and with this young girl, because she had no idea what she was about to walk into. And it was a beautiful life. It was as beautiful as I made it. Susanna, I told you this a couple of weeks ago. You're like, are you enjoying where you're living now? And I was like, well, I'll make anything beautiful. And I really did make, I think that's maybe a superpower that I have, is to make anything beautiful, but to the sake of potentially ignoring the truth. And
Mm-hmm.
and I did have a really beautiful life. I mean, when my husband left, he said, we have the best marriage out of anybody I know. And it's just so confusing. So when I look back with so much pride on who I was and how I lived, and I think I really did the best I knew how. And it takes two people. It
Yeah.
takes two people, and I still see that desire to create something where it includes other people. And I'm like, oh no, I got it. I have the best vision. Like, I will do it. And it's like, no, 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 no. There's 5 or 6 or 8 other people here. Like, you need to like let other people co-create with you, because
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing, I've got my own business, and so I can do that in some ways. But even today I was uh talking to a potential hire, and I'm like, oh, like, I think if I hire you, I'm gonna have to step all the way back and just let you step in and probably make mistakes and fall, and that's okay, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And you talked about this at the very, very beginning, of how we were taught so much about relationships and really appreciating other people, but we weren't taught critical thinking.
Yeah.
And and now as I look back, I just know that the critical thinking aspect was really missing in my marriage, where I knew intuitively, and intuition, critical thinking, I actually think that they're very intermarried. Um, but I knew something was wrong for 8 years and I never listened to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, yeah, I had a big part to play in the marriage ending. I didn't say what I knew to be true sooner. And I didn't reinforce it, and I didn't get help, and I didn't get, you know what I mean? So I think I look back with a lot of pride, and it's kind of like this. His therapist said this to us after hearing our story right before he left. And his therapist was like, this sounds like a tragic love story. And I'm just realizing that that's part of life, and
Mm-hmm.
it's tragic.
Yeah.
And I think that might be what it is. And maybe the element of redemption is, don't try to force redemption where it hasn't been found yet, and just
Mm.
let it die. Don't try to redeem it too early.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I With that point about redemption being prematurely found, I think that's a coping mechanism to kind of, yeah, project something where they're really, that it's just not true in that instance. And I think we were raised with a strong aversion to suffering, and um and I mean, I think a lot of people do this. People don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
move through suffering. They have all these coping mechanisms to avoid it, because yeah, it's just like the tragic raw reality of life, and you just have to accept it. There really isn't any other choice except to embrace that that's just what happens and that's what is.
Right.
Uh,
Wow.
and I and then letting it shape you, and how you respond to it, that has so much of the redeeming qualities of it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm learning is it really is just a tragedy, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it broke. And then like it'll take time, but you'll get excited for the next thing. And I guess this is just a word to anyone listening. Like it will take time and you can grieve, and it's okay to resist what fills its place, but like it does damage to you eventually to not just accept it and embrace it. So yeah, I think I'm personally working through how to move from that beautiful vision, because I was journaling the other night. I was like, I don't want to let go.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like that really is crazy, but that's a testament to the love that was there and the beauty that was there. But it's like, oh, I haven't quite figured out how to let go yet, but it really is, I think, just a matter of time and continuing to move forward. So, yeah.
Well, you gave me a complete reframe on redemption just now, which was so beautiful. It's like perhaps actually an a redemption story could very well be simply who you've become. Am I enough to allow for my own change and the experience of growth or involvement? Like I feel so different than who I was then. Is that enough to warrant redemption? Is that alone in isolation redemption? Is how we change?
I saw a girl, like a young college girl who went to my alma mater, and I could just tell that she was from there. And I asked her, I was like, hey, did you go to this school? And she's like, yeah. And she kind of asked me a little bit about my life, and this is while I was in the middle of the chaos, and I was like, well,
Let me tell you.
let me
Great.
tell you. And because, I mean, again, it was a very conservative Christian school. Literally all of my friends have gotten married. Some of them are on their third kid. I'm 26, like they're on their third child. So it very much was like that was just what happened. And you kind of feel like there's something wrong with you if it doesn't happen, but it's such a microcosm of how things are done. So I was just like, all of a sudden I was reflected back to me like, oh, I'm 26 and I'm not married. And now I have to justify this in talking to this girl. What the fuck? Like, this is so crazy. I haven't thought about this in a very long time, needing to like explain to somebody why I'm still single. This is weird. Anyway, but yeah, it kind of all of a sudden I had going through my mind, oh, how do I justify things not working out as I thought? Because I did think that I was going to marry this person I was in a relationship with for a while. And I was like, because just in that framework of comparing yourself to people who have a different outcome in life than you,
yeah,
married, not married, what are the pros and cons to that? And for me, I was just telling her, I was like, I have had so many opportunities to be shaped and change in ways that I know my married friends just don't have that opportunity. Not that it's better or worse, it's just different. And that's your story, and that's you. And that's something that, I mean, you can resist that if you want and be very unhappy, or you can lean into it, and that's just everybody's experience. Like there's always pros and cons, but yeah, letting each of those new experiences shape you and change you and make you and develop your individuality. I think, yeah, that's what I'm trying to grab onto from all of my personal experiences.
So good. Well, and honestly, one of the things that I really respect about you, Susanna, is the way that you've really talk about diversification. Your interests alone dude. The way you paint, you really are like the epitome of a Renaissance woman in so many ways. Like your ability to paint, play piano, sing, you've been cultivating that, and how much you read. You use your time so well. And so how do you ensure that it's interesting because if you think about sitting there painting, maybe you're not mentally stimulated, whereas you actually are getting like the film that can kind of corrode our mind, soul, spirit when we are engaging with something like social media. And again, we already talked about social media. I know that there's pros. Obviously, we're now on social media.
Yes.
And it's funny how all encompassing it is. It's very engrossing. But if you're doing something else that is cultivating you, your mind is still almost
Mhm.
open. And so, how do you ensure that you are thinking about and processing without going into unnecessary pain or even unnecessary danger? How do you discern? Do you have any sound bites between, okay, this is the darkness and the uncertainty that I actually need to pursue for the purpose of growth, versus I am erring on the side of maybe even wallowing in this
Mhm.
unnecessary depth of pain that I'm just now in this pit versus the abyss that I need to move through?
Yeah. Huh, well, I think that's funny you asked that because I note to self I should go to therapy again because I've hit a wall where I can't figure it out anymore. And I think
Mm,
like we are so well equipped to take ourselves on a journey of self-discovery and kind of put dots together through
yeah,
self-reflection. But there really is a point where like our brains, our emotions, our heart, it is a whole profession that I think, people are very well equipped to help you kind of go through your own blocks where you
right.
feel you don't understand. So yeah, I felt like, I mean, to the point of I don't know how to like move on in a way. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to do that actually. I should talk to somebody who knows.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I think there's yeah, I think if I
Mhm.
don't have the time to self-reflect, that's when I'll go to therapy. If I'm hitting a wall where I can't figure it out by myself, that's when I'll go to therapy.
Yeah.
Or if I am feeling really, because most of the time, if you just sit down with your journal, dude, yourself will be open to you if you just start writing and following the through line. Even if you don't feel like you're saying, like, you can just start describing your day. Just start with that because it's hard to just kind of sit down and be like, oh, I'm in my heart now. It like kind of takes some time to kind of get to that. So just kind of let yourself think, and writing it down is a
Yeah.
really stay on task. But if you feel so afraid to encounter yourself that way, that's also probably a good sign
Um,
to go to therapy and kind of get that help to enter that space. Because I've
wow.
definitely hit times in my own journey where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to sit with it. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but it's scary. So we're gonna get some help. So that's what I would say.
Mm. I love that. And it's a good perspective. I'm just looking here in the chat where it's like nobody, and I think Susanna, you've done this so well, where it's like nobody can tell you exactly, but they can be that guide. And so it's like you do this fine job of like balancing, okay, I'm no longer getting there on my own. Let me go back. Okay, I'm good for a while. I can do the work on my own. Okay, let me go back. And I
Mhm.
think that's the thing, is looking, okay, who can guide me in these other areas? It's like a mentor in so many
Yeah,
ways. And we go for a professional mentor, a business mentor, financial mentor. Why not emotional mentor?
yeah.
Why not getting support to go to access the next level, or just have an alternative opinion?
Hmm.
That's one of the things that we both actually saw a gentleman a couple years ago. I loved him. What was the app that we used?
Growth therapy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I loved him. It was just like this monthly subscription. And
Yeah.
the thing that I really, really loved was just asking him, like, what am I not seeing? And of
Mm,
course, he's not in the moment, but effectively, like, he's playing devil's advocate,
yeah.
and that's the goal. That's the goal, is that you have somebody poking you. And you're like, oh, I don't like this, but I
Yeah.
can't take it too personally because I'm paying you to do it. And like, what a blessing that is, to be
Yeah.
poked and prodded to go into the places you don't want to go.
And I think that that's a really good point. My predisposition is to always kind of fight with myself from the other person's perspective, and that's what kept me in a bad relationship for so long. Because I was like,
Mm,
oh, I see why he's doing this. Never mind what I think. Like I understand where
yeah.
he's coming from. No
Wow.
boundaries were the result of that. So I
Mm,
think, yeah, I naturally kind of play devil's advocate for myself, and that can actually keep me from finding my own boundary or my
wow.
own.
What a
So
good point.
that's something that my therapist has actually done for me. She's like, no, no, that's like, never mind what he thinks. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, I don't know.
That's so, so, so good.
Yeah.
I wonder, for all of us listening to that, I think it's actually really important for us to know, in what relationship dynamics do I sit in the other person's experience versus maybe I have an overemphasis on mine. Because if we were to look at, given that nothing's linear, hardly ever, but if we were to look at the linear progression between, empathy all the way through, or let's say codependence is on one side, which is like very, very extreme. And then narcissism is on the other side, very, very extreme. It's like being somewhere in the middle so that you still have a hand and foot in empathy, and then you still have a foot in, I know my authentic experience, but I'm not so overemphasized on the part of my experience that I'm blind to somebody else. And then I'm not so overly empathetic that I actually have no access to myself whatsoever. And I'm so codependent. So it's like, those are the extremes in so many ways. And here's the thing that's interesting. I think that imbalance can look different per relationship.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Maybe yeah, like overly empathetic in one versus another. But Susanna, this conversation is so important. And y'all, I'm just gonna look here in the chat in just a minute for any last questions. I know that we're kind of running up towards the end, but so if you guys have any questions for Susanna, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But Susanna, before I get to that, if there's one thing, one practice, one concept, one lesson that you've learned in this season. I mean, again, you've led the charge in so many ways of wandering into the unknown far before I did, much less our other siblings. And so what's one practice concept that you've learned?
About like navigating the unknown.
How to engage with it, just how to think about it. Yeah, how to navigate it, whatever you want to speak to.
Yeah. I think we've touched on a lot of things earlier, but I think keeping yourself grounded is really important in some regards. So for me, that's kind of looked differently. Like sometimes it's breath work, sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's just like the ritual of coffee in the morning. Recently it's been a walk, but yeah, I think just something that gives you space to breathe and reflect and just kind of return to yourself and be like, it's okay. And that helps give perspective. And I think when you are in a space where you know that you feel peaceful, you can kind of recognize the stress easier, and because you recognize it, then you can manage it better. So I think it's good to start that earlier in the day so you can kind of just go into whatever your routine is with that awareness already locked in. So
good. I really, really, really love that, because like starting from that place. Starting from that place.
Vertical alignment.
Yeah. Wonderful. Just looking through here. I don't see too many questions. Susanna, thank you so much for your time. I love you. I'm so grateful
for you. I love you. This was so nice I feel like, I mean, we go forever whenever we start talking, but it's nice to kind of be in like a structured setting. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, I'd love to answer any follow-up questions, but yeah, I hope this was helpful for people. It definitely was helpful for me to just kind of reiterate a lot of what those lessons are. And yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful. I know I've had light bulb moments throughout just you talking, and it's been so meaningful to even think about, honestly, where am I? Where do I have an aversion to the darkness? I saw folks in the chat really, really having a strong reaction to therapy, which
oh, interesting.
Which is good. Guys, like if you're having a strong reaction to something, lean into that. That's the very thing
that's the unknown for you.
That's the unknown. Exactly. Like what, man, makes you, I actually have that as a question. I've led multiple masterminds through this question of what are your values? And one of the questions I ask is what makes you mad? So why are
Mhm.
you mad about therapy? Why does that get you? Why, like, what is that? Because so often that anger and that passion is tied to something deeply within you that you actually hold as a value. And there's a
Yeah.
story associated with that. So it's like, man, if we can just kind of take that third party perspective of like observing and being aware, like, oh, that's interesting that that just came
Mhm.
up. And Susanna, you said curiosity earlier.
Mhm.
Learning to look at ourselves and look at others through a lens of curiosity versus judgment, man, does that open up the world in terms of, man, I can learn something from every single person. Every single person has something to offer, because otherwise, man, every single person is somebody to be afraid of, to judge, to,
Mhm.
man, it's like, how can we coexist in love if we've got judgment as our lens?
Yeah. And can I just share a quick anecdote? I was talking to
Please.
somebody who is like culturally very different. Like they're from the Middle East, and men in that culture specifically are just, there's much a bigger barrier between the concept of manhood and kind of embracing emotions. I think men just are not as allowed to engage with that as men are more welcome to do so in the US. And so I was like, well, but he was talking about something that made him really, really angry. And I was like, well, isn't anger an emotion? He was
Mm.
like, I guess so. And I was like, well, why were you angry? He knew exactly why he was angry at something. And I was like, what if you had the same curiosity about other types of feelings? Because then you can trace it back to something that you can learn about you. And isn't it
Mm.
super valuable to know you? Because then you have that much more to offer other people. So if you are able to understand, yeah, like what your reactions are to things,
Mm.
then that's like the gateway to knowing yourself. Because as you said, it signals a value.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
a lot of times, I don't know, I think therapy can look a lot of different ways, and maybe there's an attachment where it's
Mm.
more clinical, not clinical whatsoever.
Yeah.
Man, it really doesn't require any kind of diagnosis to be in therapy. I kind of like to view it as counseling more so, just someone who
I love
really
that.
understands the patterns of human behavior, knows a lot of different types of reasons why we might respond to situations, because like
Mm.
humans are knowable, you know,
Mm.
and to have that map that somebody is already familiar with can just be a way to expedite knowing yourself. So that's kind of my two
Mm.
more directly to
Good.
that.
Well, I really, really, really appreciate that reframe to counseling. Um, yeah, and it's to DJ what you said about a guide. It's somebody to ask questions and help draw you out, which I love that. And I saw the Count of Saint Germain. It looks like there's somebody here that I just haven't seen in the chat. Rob, who lost his wife, which is just,
Oh.
Rob, I am so sorry. I haven't seen where in the chat that was said. I know sometimes I don't see all the chats, but I just, oh, I'm so sorry. Our sister lost her husband, and it was the most devastating thing. So I just want you to know that we're so, so, so sorry, and sending you love and prayers. I'm right when I hop off, I'm gonna pray for you. So I'm sorry, my friend. I really, really, really am. There's nothing quite like that kind of loss. So, y'all, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know that this conversation brought up some emotions. Anger is one of them, like you said, Suzanne. Um, and good. I think it's really important that I've had people as guests on the show that I actually don't agree with, and
Yeah.
and that's good. It's good to be challenged and to be curious. And I think in that curiosity, as we listen to others, it also helps us go deep on why is this important to me? And then
Yeah.
even be able to contend from a place. If we're contending with others rooted in fear, that's usually when we get angry and have really emotions that we can't control, versus like, I actually, if somebody says something that I just know is not true about me, I've had people come on here and be like, you're transgender. And I'm like, no,
Oh.
that doesn't even bother me, because it's so no, like, I'm not a man. But if I had, or maybe, you know what I mean? If I was insecure, about how I know that I have a very masculine jaw. So if I was really insecure about that, then somebody saying that would really maybe cut me quite deep. So if we get really upset about something, usually it's because that's a sign to go and
Mhm.
to something that's painful or that's
Yeah.
wounded there.
And
So
it takes a lot of bravery to do that. So proud
word.
of everyone in advance, including myself and Christene, for leaning into what we react to, because it is an
Yeah,
act of courage.
that's good. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. I'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. for the Knowing Show. In the meantime, have a wonderful night, Susanna. Thank you. So grateful
Thank
for you.
you.